Me in my prime, I would definitely smoke Shawn. Wasn't even close. I was 230, he was 200. Shredded from head to toe. Shawn, he didn't even have shredded glutes, man. Come on, man.
Hey guys, even here with the Old School Labs, and you know what time it is. It's comparison, and also we can call it drama time. So we have two 90s bodybuilders. One of them retired long time ago, like 20 years ago, and the other one is still placing in the top spots at the Mr. Olympia and all the other top shows. Of course, we're talking about Dexter Jackson here on the left and Shawn Ray on the right. Not so long ago, Shawn Ray went to the Valuetainment YouTube channel and he said some things about the current bodybuilders. He said pretty bad things about them. He said that none of them would crack the top 10 during the 90s, and he said that Dexter Jackson would maybe crack the top 10, but while he was at his prime, quote unquote, during the late 90s, which were first years at the Mr. Olympia for Dexter Jackson, 1999, 2000, 2001, 1999 being his Mr. Olympia debut, Shawn Ray says that Dexter couldn't crack the top 6 and couldn't beat Shawn Ray. Which is basically true, but were those Dexter's prime years? Of course not. And Dexter just came to the Valuetainment YouTube channel, he did a podcast, and he said some juicy things about the whole situation. And he also wrote about it on his Instagram after this, where he was even more brutal. Let me play this little video for you and we're gonna talk about it more in a moment. Take a look.
Current era against your era.
No, none of these guys in the top 10. Dexter in his prime couldn't make the top 6 of the Olympia, and I was there.
My first 3 years are not my prime. My prime went until I hit 2005, 6, and 7. When Shawn beat me my first 3 years, he was Shawn Ray. That last Olympia, I got photos. You can see the photos. I smoked Shawn his last year, but he's Shawn Ray. You know what I'm saying? Me in my prime, I would definitely smoke Shawn. Wasn't even close. I was 230, he was 200. Shredded from head to toe. Shawn, he didn't even have shredded glutes, man. Come on, man. And he was narrow, he had no sweeps on his quads. No, I would definitely smoke Shawn.
And that's the Blade for you, the ultimate badass of bodybuilding. Just as blunt and as honest and as brutal as he always is. So before we check the facts, before we check what he said and compare it to what Shawn Ray said, we're gonna check the Instagram post that Dexter wrote after this interview, because that one is a little bit more brutal than the interview. So let's check this. Obviously there are two shots of their backs compared during the times while Shawn was beating Dexter actually. But yeah, Dexter said that was because of the politics, because he had an established name, but he was better. That's Dexter's words. Here he says, Shawn Ray said he'd beat me in my prime? I'm the same weight as him in these photos. My 3rd year in the pros. Haven't reached my prime yet. Y'all be the judge. I know you're all fans, but put that aside and judge what you see. Since he runs his mouth so much, I thought I'd let y'all judge. I always tell him he's only won 2 shows in his 13-year career. And don't compare me to you if you haven't won the Mr. Olympia. Uh-oh, shots fired, shots fired. Don't compare me against you if you haven't won the Mr. Olympia. That was basically a knockout punch. I mean, whatever Shawn says, whatever his competition was, he still never won the Mr. Olympia, and Dexter is a Mr. Olympia champion. Dexter also goes to say that Shawn only won 2 shows, and you guys know that Dexter is holding the record of 29 pro wins, and he almost won his 30th one at the Arnold Classic 2020 at 50 years of age. If you ask me, I mean, you can notice it by my voice. I sound biased, but that's because I consider Dexter one of the biggest legends of bodybuilding, and I don't think Shawn Ray can say anything bad about him, because these guys are not on the same level physique-wise or achievement-wise. So some people would say that 90s were better era, but Dexter also made a point in this interview, you should watch the whole thing if you haven't, that you cannot compare the eras. He knows, he competed at both of them, so he knows probably the best. He says that during the 90s, what the judges were looking for was that dry look, the conditioning. Today, it's all about the fullness. So it's not easy to compare 2 eras, But then again, you shouldn't compare the photos, you shouldn't compare the videos, you shouldn't do anything aside from going to the show and watch the shows and shut up. If that was the case, I wouldn't have a YouTube channel, I wouldn't be here speaking to you guys. So let's actually do some comparison. Let me show you this little thing that I found interesting. So you can see here Ronnie Coleman, who was outclassing these two smaller guys, Dexter Jackson and Shawn Ray both. And this is either 1999, 2000 or 2001 Mr. Olympia. You can see right here that the difference between Shawn and Dexter is not big at all. They are pretty similar. I wouldn't know who would I choose. Who would you choose? Who do you think looks better? Shawn kind of has the size on him, but it's the angle. He's closer to the camera. So I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not sure. It's very close. And mind you, this was one of the first 3 years of Dexter Jackson as a pro. He turned pro in 1999 and he did the Mr. Olympia that year as well after he turned pro. So let's check this next photo that I wanted to show you. This was basically Shawn Ray's competition, most of it. Kevin Levrone was never the Mr. Olympia champion, but he was one of the favorites. He was second 2 times. So this was basically what competition looked like during the 90s. The guys were not as complete as they are today. It wasn't exactly required. The top guys were genetically super gifted. They were shaped so well. Shawn Ray and Kevin Levrone were perfect examples of that. Take a look at those muscle bellies and the shape and the waist to shoulder ratio and everything. But then again, compare this. I mean, this is amazing here. This is beautiful. But compare it to this. This is basically what bodybuilding evolved into. This is Kai Green, obviously. And this is what bodybuilding was in the modern era. Now, I'm sure most of you guys here prefer the 90s. And I do as well when it comes to talent. But when it comes to the judges and the requirements of bodybuilders and the quality of conditioning and the complete package, I would still rather go with modern bodybuilding because these guys, even though they may not be super crazy shredded like Dorian Yates, for example, and like Andreas Munzer and so on, I'm still thinking that most 90s bodybuilders did not have complete package when it comes to shredded glutes or hamstrings or lower back. Today, that is a necessity in every division basically, in every bodybuilding division, and this is what Dexter had to battle. Take a look at this here, I mean, Kai Green. Dexter battled against him and in some poses more than the others, he was actually comparing pretty well. Obviously, most of these guys in modern bodybuilding are big, they are huge. And Dexter grew because of that. During the early 2000s and late 90s where he competed, he was, as he says, around 205 pounds. Later, he got up to 235 pounds of stage weight. And for a guy who is only 5'6.5" tall, 30 pounds of meat is a lot. When I'm trying to explain people how much that is, just imagine buying 30 pounds of chicken in a store and putting it everywhere on your body. Can you imagine that? And just compare now Dexter while he was compared next to Shawn Ray and add those 30 pounds of chicken all over his body. That's a big gain, man. That's a big gain. That's a lot of gains. So, to summarize the whole thing, I think it's pretty obvious what happened here. Shawn Ray was maybe even better than Dexter during the first 3 years of Dexter's career, but later on Dexter grew so much, and today in bodybuilding guys are full and they are conditioned, they are complete, they all have shredded glutes, shredded hamstrings, everything needs to be tight and full, so it's a different era, and if you ask me, it is a stronger era. I think so. Even though Dorian Yates with all his grainy conditioning is my favorite bodybuilder of all time, I don't think he would do that well against the modern guys because of the size and the fullness. If he changed his game a little, he would do great, I'm sure, but the way he was during the 90s, no. And Shawn Ray wasn't as conditioned as Dorian, and if he wanted to be as full as these guys right here, and as conditioned as them, he would have to grow a lot more muscle than what he had before. So, to simply answer the question, I am 100% agreeing with Dexter. I think Dexter is a far better bodybuilder than Shawn Ray, and during the 90s he would definitely crack the top 6, and the whole lineup of 2019 Mr. Olympia would do much better than what Shawn Ray says. And that's my take, guys. If you have different take, if you think otherwise, make sure to let me know down below in the comment section. I will read all the comments. Just make sure to let me know whatever you think. I'll like the video if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to this channel, guys. All the best, and don't forget to keep it old school.